super luxurious brown butter banana cake. It's an upside down cake, so we're gonna see how fun and simple it is to make a cake where you bake it with the top on the bottom. In our case, it's gonna be caramel and beautiful caramelizing bananas. And then when you serve it, you actually flip it so that that oozing, gorgeous caramel layer is on top. It's pretty spectacular. And you'll see, it bakes up super fast. It's like a perfect little snacking cake to have around if people are dropping in, or if you feel like treating yourself to a gorgeous little confection hanging out on your kitchen island. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is brown some butter. We want a stick of butter into a saucepan, and we're gonna get that melting. And you'll see over like a medium-high heat. As the butter starts to melt, the first thing that will happen is some foaming action as some of the liquid evaporates off. Then we are going to have the milk solids in the butter, which honestly are a big part of why butter tastes so rich and creamy. It is the remaining bits of milk in there. And those will start to brown and turn very like nutty and caramelized, and the smell of the butter will turn very nutty. And then the butter itself will start to brown. And that happens for like 1 minute, and you're gonna watch it and be careful and watch it, because right after that 1 minute of browning of butter becomes burning of butter. So we are going to achieve lusciously browned butter, beurre noisette, smells like hazelnuts, and we will use that to scent and juice up this beautiful, beautiful brown butter banana upside down cake. Do make sure that you pop in and swirl this butter every once in a while. You don't want any of it scorching if it's sitting on like a hot part of the bottom of your pan. And I'm gonna lower the heat ever so slightly since this is very saucy. It's getting very feisty at me spitting hot butter. All right, but it's starting to smell. It's starting to smell a little caramelized, a little nuttier, delicious. While this is going, I'm gonna gather together my other ingredients. So I will say this, I kept this cake super simple. It's something my kids love, I love it. It's like just bananas and caramel and vanilla. What could be better? If you wanted to spice this up, say you wanted to make it more like gingerbread flavored or more of that pumpkin pie essence coming through, you can definitely add cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, cardamom, all of the above. And really like elevate the sort of spiciness of this cake, but really simple the way it is right now, it tends to be quite the crowd pleaser. While we are getting the butter nice and browned, we can get our cake tin prepared. Another thing I really love about this cake recipe is it's made in one single layer, 9-inch cake round. There's no frosting to be done, no additional layers of work. You literally make a batter, make a quick caramel to lay your bananas into, and let it bake, and you're in business. I just took a little softened butter to grease our pan, and I will still also be using a layer of parchment paper. Why? Because it's a tiny little extra step that guarantees you success, and I have had too many disastrous, crestfallen baking experiences where I, for some reason or another, had not greased my cake enough, and it did not release properly. And then, you know, eating broken cake isn't the worst thing in the world, but it could be avoided. That's what we're talking about. You can see how rich and ambery this liquid is. And I'll be honest, I did let a little bit of the milk solids burn, so I'm gonna leave those behind. With our beautiful ambery liquid, I'm going to stick this back in the fridge because I want it to cool and not cook anymore. It smells perfectly nutty and toasty. If it smelled burned, I would not be using it. And now we can get to work on our caramel, which is going to be in our same pot. Yeah, but you can see like the burned pieces down there. Tragic. Don't get distracted. Or do get distracted and then recognize that there are usually recovery moments to be had. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do one thing at a time. We're gonna finish up lining that cake pan, and then we will make our quick caramel. You guys have seen me do this before, but it never gets old. Such a good trick to have. So you're gonna fold your parchment paper in half once, and then making sure you're on the side that's actually connected, fold it in half again. And hold on to that point because you're gonna fold it in half again. Now we're making a triangle shape. And we know I am not much of a crafter, but I can do this part. And so now you've just made all at that single point on the paper that was connected, a lovely triangle shape that you're gonna use to measure to the center of the pan, right here. And give a little snip. And you are left with a circle, the perfect size of your cake pan. And the best part is I had enough butter here at the bottom of my pan that I'm just gonna smooth my paper down so it is covered in the butter from the base of the pan, and then lift it up and flip it over, and now you have both sides of your parchment paper well greased and ready to lift up after the cake has finished baking. Now to make this caramel, we're going to take 4 tablespoons of butter, so about half of the remaining stick, and melt that over a medium heat together with a half cup of brown sugar. Dark brown sugar is my preference, but I'm using light brown today because it's what I had. Another thing I love about this cake is it's pretty versatile. Like most of these things you'll probably already have in your pantry anyway, but if you need to make some substitutions, you can. Sometimes if I'm using a light brown sugar like I am today, I might add like a squeeze of date syrup or molasses, something to give a little bit of that sort of malty, rich, syrupy situation that dark brown sugar has a little bit more of than the light brown, but it's not a critical step. And trust me, nobody is going to be complaining about this spectacular caramel layer. We're not looking to let this cook for a long time. It really is just to help the sugar dissolve somewhat into the melted butter, keep it pourable. No candy making happening here today. We're really just doing a simple caramel sauce. Okay, so the caramel layer is smooth, very pourable and liquid. We didn't try to condense it down or anything. I'm taking it off the heat and I'll add in about a tablespoon of vanilla extract now. A little bit of that hot heat, plus a little pinch of flaky salt. Doesn't have to be flaky. Kosher salt is great, but I just had my flaky salt closer. And we are going to pour this into our prepared cake pan. And just sort of tilt your pan to let it run and cover the entire surface area. And now we're going to slice our bananas in half and make a pretty arrangement on the base of your cake pan. And this is where you can let your creative crafting instinct fly. Any design you like works. You can do spiral, you can do like a hodgepodge, just fitting the bananas in any which way. I just like to try to make sure that almost all, if not all, of the surface area is covered in lovely banana. So I start by slicing them in half and then just sort of laying them into our caramel layer. And then once you start to get your bananas end up being a little bit too long for the distance of the pan, you can just trim them down a little bit. Lovely. Okay, that looks good to me. I feel like we have a, you know, whatever. It looks good. There is no judgment on your banana artistry. Okay, it's time to make the cake batter itself. In this bowl, I have a cup of all-purpose flour and half a cup of almond meal or almond flour. And I like that combination because I find like the almond meal gives it a little bit of a richness and just a pillowiness, a plushness to this cake batter that I really enjoy. But you can use all-purpose flour for the entire quantity, all 1.5 cups, and it works great. To this, I'm going to add a pinch of kosher salt and also 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And this is the place where you could add your cinnamon or your nutmeg, cardamom, any other ground ginger, any allspice, an allspice banana cake. Lovely. But I'm keeping it simple today. In this bowl, I'm going to grab our browned butter that has cooled now. Okay, so I pulled our brown butter out of the fridge after it had solidified and let it just hang on the counter a couple minutes just so it's nice and smooth, sort of buttercream consistency. And now I will add this to my bowl and cream it together with a cup of sugar. If you don't feel like going through the step of making the brown butter, you can totally just use a stick of softened butter. But it happens to be effort that is well worth the time and investment for maximum deliciousness. And then you can use a stand mixer or a hand mixer, and we are going to beat together our browned butter and a cup of granulated sugar until they are light and fluffy. First of all, smells divine in here. Brown butter heaven. Second of all, this is roughly the texture at which you'll want to stop beating your sugar and brown butter together. It took about 2 minutes. All the sugar is coated in the butter. It's light and fluffy, and it will start to look more like the wet batter as we add in our eggs and vanilla extract and the rest of this brown butter cake party. Eggs get added in one at a time and give them like 15 seconds to beat into the batter each. And look how quickly the texture changes. Scrape down the sides in between each egg just to make sure everything is getting incorporated. Second egg going in. Okay, vanilla extract going in, about a tablespoon. I like to go pretty heavy on this vanilla extract situation here because that's really our main flavor, in addition to the bananas and the caramel. All right, that is gorgeous. Come and see the consistency on this batter. It is really lovely and pillowy looking. The reason we take our time to really beat each egg in properly, 15 seconds each, is because those eggs are helping to build, with their protein and with their fat, both the tender texture of this cake and also the structure of the cake. So don't skimp. Now is the fun part where we get to do fractions. So we're gonna add half of our dry mix here. Remember, that was the all-purpose flour, any spices you choose to add in, the baking powder, some salt, and the almond flour. And we are going to just blend that into our wet batter until it's almost entirely incorporated. And then we will add in half of our buttermilk. And buttermilk, if you don't have it sitting at home, it's easy to make your own. Add a tablespoon of lemon juice to the base of a cup measure, and then fill the cup up with whole milk. And you will be left with 1 cup of buttermilk after about 20 minutes. You can see how thick this has gotten. That's exactly how I just made it. Little curds will start to form. I had to make the full cup to make this ratio work, so I will be leaving just a little bit behind after our batter is all mixed. All right, right about there, we'll add the rest of our dry mix in. And the last of our 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. And stirring this portion by hand, just make sure we don't overdevelop the gluten. We want a really light and tender cake. Plus it feels self-sufficient and good to do it by hand. And that's it, guys. You have a beautiful brown butter cake batter here. Pouring this over our banana and caramel layer. And just use your spatula to smooth it over the banana layers. Give it a little shake just to even out the surface. And this is going into a 350-degree oven, 50 to 55 minutes. Trust me, you will not be able to resist the smell. You will know when it is done, and you will be able to insert a toothpick or a cake tester, and it will be just a tender, moist crumb coming out. Yum. Okay, so it has been about 52 minutes. Let's test our cake first. Oh wow, I smell serious banana goodness happening. Beautiful, light, tender, barely there crumbs. Perfect. Pull her out. Wow. Golden brown top. Smell like rich caramelizing bananas. I smell that faint vanilla and sugar and butter. The caramel underneath. Okay, we have to let it cool like 5 minutes. And then before the caramel completely sets, we're going to turn it out and over onto our serving plate. And you will see the spectacle of an upside down brown butter banana cake. We patiently waited almost 10 minutes here for the caramel to settle and cool just a little bit. I'm going to take a butter knife or offset spatula and just wiggle it around to make sure the sides will release easily. All these little steps just to make sure all of our hard work pays off. All of our not so hard work, all of our fun, making something that smells this delicious pay off. Ooh, there's a good little sneaky hint of the caramel that is to come. Okay, I put my cake plate that I will be serving on top of my pan. Now for the moment of truth. Flip it over. Give it a tap for good luck. Wow. Never give up. Never surrender. But do be kind of amazed that the parchment paper didn't even come off the bottom because that caramel slipped right out. That is how beautiful this cake is. Oh my gosh, I cannot begin with you. I am gonna make sure that we get everything we came for and scrape up this little bit of leftover caramel and just drizzle that right on top. And okay, it's banana caramel now, even sweeter, even more vanilla scented, even more like vacation feeling right now, can I be honest? Even more delicious. That was the gratifying move that we were meant to have from the cake, but now we'll just use it as our own personal caramel drip. We really didn't have much left behind, but we've come this far. Just keep it going. We've done admiring how beautiful you are. You're very beautiful. Let's do it. And remember, we had the richness and the acidity from the buttermilk. We have the brown butter essence coming through. We have rich caramelized bananas on top. We have caramel floating beautifully as a layer on top of this very moist looking cake. I mean, I'm not really sure anything could have gone wrong here, given what we were working with, but every single thing went very right. The brown butter comes through loud and clear. It is so rich and moist in this cake crumb. The sweetness of the bananas on top with that caramel just like soaking into the top layer of the cake. It is so tender and light and still rich from that almond flour we included in the cake batter. Amazingly, because the bananas have kind of warmed and melted in the oven, they form like a custard layer on top of the really perfect cake underneath, and then you get the glossing, the little like icing of the caramel on top. Do you see how moist and tender this crumb is? I can't really get over it, actually. There is very little that I would do to improve upon this cake, other than to say that it is the treat you've waited all week for. Tomorrow is Friday. You have time. Maybe you have no time, but you should make time to make a cake that makes you look this damn good and tastes even better.